Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gautama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/supportbuddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Okay, I'll go ahead and get started this evening by welcoming all of you guys back. Welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see you all here. Tonight, we're going to be doing meditation together like we typically do each time before class. And then I'm going to move into talking about the 5 precepts. These are 5 impactful decisions that you can make, either wise or unwise, that lead to either wholesome results or unwholesome results. And I'm going to teach this to you with the original words of the Buddha. The meditation that we had planned for this evening is walking meditation, because I taught it this morning and then you guys practiced it, and then give you guys a chance to practice it again tonight. So if you guys would like to do walking meditation, that's what's planned. But if you're not feeling up to it, we can also do seated meditation or something else. Let me take a poll. How many of you guys would like to do walking meditation? Okay, let's see. 1, 2, keep your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, now how many would like to do seated or lying or standing? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, it's even. Did you vote twice? No? Okay. So you're the tiebreaker. Okay, so we'll do seated, lying, standing. But if those of you guys that would like to do walking, we don't have to all do the same thing. You can do walking. There's the space right there. So what I'll do is I'll start with the chanting and just kind of ease us into meditation. And then I'm going to do the guidance for breathing mindfulness meditation. But for those of you guys that would like to do the walking, go for it. I taught it this morning, so you can do the circle over there. So go for it. Don't feel like you have to do the same thing that everyone else is doing. It's all about your own independent journey, your own decisions, right? You're not attached to other people. So if you feel like you'd like to do walking, go ahead and go for it. Okay. So I'm going to ease into meditation with the chanting, and then I'll do the guidance, and then we'll have that period of time where it'll just be quiet, and then we'll come out with the chanting as well. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakewa Otang Mahakewanhang Apiwateyami Savakato Mahakewata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakewato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma สัมมุตโตวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสักขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสตาตาวามานุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose, or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. สัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันตังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามานุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I'll once again just welcome all of you guys, including those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating, those of you guys here at the temple and everyone online. Welcome to everyone. I'd also like to just apologize for my scratchy voice here. I've got a little bit of a sore throat going on, so apologize for that, but we should be able to talk about our topic tonight just fine. Another way to say that is I apologize for the impermanence of my voice, right? Everything's impermanent around you. Even the voice is impermanent. It's going to come and go sometimes. These 5 precepts that I'm going to share with you guys, these are 5 impactful decisions that you could be making that are either going to be wise decisions or unwise decisions. And based on whether they're wise, they're going to produce wholesome results for you. And if you make these decisions in an unwise way, it's going to make unwholesome results for you. Or another way to say that is the unwholesome Kamma. The karma or Kamma, depending on what language you use, whether it's Sanskrit or Pali, this natural law of Kamma is always functioning and it's affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. So the more that you're aware of this natural law, the better, because you're going to make wise decisions that lead to wholesome results. So everything that you learn about the teachings of the Buddha in one way or another is coming back to this natural law. We talked about this morning when we were discussing the moral conduct section of the Eightfold Path. Well, here it's important to remind you about this again, because we're going to start talking about things related to moral conduct. And sometimes when people are learning things about moral conduct from a tradition like Buddhism, they might think that it's rules or commandments, or the Buddha is trying to force you or guilt you or shame you or fear you into doing something. But this isn't actually how the Buddha taught at all. He's exposing you to this natural law so that you can see the cause and effect or action and result, and then you can make wise decisions for yourself. So the teachings that I'm going to share with you are oftentimes translated as no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and no intoxicants. But this isn't actually what the Buddha said. He didn't teach that way. That sounds like rules. That sounds like commandments, right? That sounds like it's black and white. What you're going to see with the words of the Buddha is this much more illuminating language that helps you to understand this natural law of Kamma, and then how to practice in such a way that you're making wise decisions that's going to lead to wholesome results. What you do in your life is up to you. It's not up to me. It's not up to anybody else. It's your life. It's your decisions and it's your results. Nobody's trying to convince you to do anything or force you to do anything. But what I'm going to share with you are these 5 precepts and explaining them to you using the words of the Buddha. But then I'm going to apply it to everyday things that you encounter on a day-to-day basis. And I'm going to show you more and more about how to apply these 5 precepts to your daily life. And then what you choose to do is up to you, how you choose to implement these in your day-to-day life. And I'm here to help so that it isn't this black and white, but this gray area that you see, that you're more able to navigate that gray area, because it can oftentimes be really challenging taking words from 2,500 years ago and applying it to something today. But what you're going to see is the Buddha taught in a way that's timeless. His language and the words that he used, it's timeless. Just like it applied during his life, it applies now. But there are certain new things that we have now, like PCP and LSD. These things didn't exist during the lifetime of the Buddha. These are chemicals, right? So there are certain things that are happening nowadays that you can look at and see how to apply. So I'll show you what I mean as we talk about this first precept. This first precept, these are the words of the Buddha. He's saying, abandoning the taking of life, refraining from taking life, without stick or sword, diligent, compassionate, trembling for the welfare of all living beings. That doesn't say no killing, right? No killing sounds like black and white, or it almost sounds like preserve all life at all cost. That's not what the Buddha is saying here. Remember how I've guided you on the path is I've shared that you should learn teachings, you should investigate them, you should examine them, then reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you practice them and see the truth for yourself. So you're not believing anything here. You're investigating to start off with. So when you're seeing something like this and you're coming across a teaching like this, you need to examine it and investigate it. So here, it's obvious that what he's talking about is living beings. So the first question that should come to your mind is, what's a living being? Well, the Buddha provides guidance on what a living being is. He talks about something called the 5 aggregates, or it's also referred to as the 5 collections or the 5 elements. These are things that we're going to learn in this retreat, but I'll just kind of introduce them to you here for a moment. What the 5 aggregates are is they're describing to you what a living being is. A living being is going to have form, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and a consciousness. What form is physical form. Feelings are pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. Then there's perceptions. What a perception is your views and opinions of the world, how you look out at the world. Volitional formations are your choices and decisions. You have free will. And then there's a consciousness or a mind. So you know that you're a living being. So you can take this teaching of the 5 aggregates or the 5 elements or 5 collections, and you can apply it to yourself and see, do you have all 5 aggregates? Because not only are we trying to investigate what a living being is, but in order to understand a living being, this teaching of the 5 aggregates comes in. So now you need to learn that, and you need to investigate that, and you need to independently verify it. So ask yourself, do you have physical form? Yes or no? Yeah, you have physical form, right? Do you have feelings? Yes, you have feelings, right? Do you have perceptions? Do you have views and opinions about the world? Yes. Do you have volitional formations? Do you make choices and decisions? Yes, you have free will, right? And do you have a consciousness or a mind? Yes, you do. So you can see you're a living being, right? And you can apply that to dogs, cats, lizards. Those elephants that we saw today, they have all 5 aggregates, right? Any living being is going to have these 5 aggregates. But then to be sure you independently verify the 5 aggregates, apply it to something that you know is not a living being, okay? Like this chair that I'm sitting in. Does this chair have physical form? It does, right? Does it have feelings? No, it doesn't have feelings. Does it have perceptions? No, it doesn't have views and opinions about the world, does it? Does it have volitional formations like choices and decisions? Can it choose to pick itself up and move itself to another location? Nope, can't do that. Does it have a consciousness or a mind? Nope. So there you go. You can independently verify that this is not a living being. And then you can take things like bacteria and viruses and plants, and you can apply it to these things too. Because oftentimes in the unenlightened state, we use language in a way that it's not really meant to be used. So we might say, I'm going to kill this tree, or I'm going to kill this virus, or I'm going to kill this bacteria. But these things aren't actually living beings. A tree has physical form, but it doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have perceptions. It doesn't have volitional formations. It can't choose to pick itself up and replant itself somewhere else. And it can't do that because it doesn't have a consciousness or a mind. So you can apply that to a virus or to a bacteria. But the challenge is in the unenlightened state, we might say, I'm going to kill that tree, or don't kill that tree, or I'm going to kill this virus, or I'm going to kill this bacteria. What we're really doing is we're harvesting the tree, or we're harvesting the broccoli, or we're harvesting the fruit. We're not actually killing it, right? And we're not killing the bacteria. We're not killing the virus. We're eliminating it from the body. We're not killing it because it's not a living being. You can't kill a non-living being. Like I can't kill this chair, right? Because it's not a living being. So this bacteria, this virus, this tree, I can't kill it because it's not a living being, right? So right away, it's important to look at and understand what this living being is. So if those 5 aggregates are something that you can understand at this point and you can see what they are, okay, use those. But if you need kind of a shorthand way to understand this living beings, is sometimes this might be helpful for you, is to think about a living being coming from an egg, a sperm, and it's going to have a consciousness. But this isn't true in all cases. That's why the Buddha didn't use this definition. He used the 5 aggregates, or the 5 collection, or the 5 elements. That's what truly defines a living being. So that's the best way to look at it. And that's why we're going to be exploring that as part of this retreat. But this can be a shorthand way for you to think about it in the time frame that perhaps as you're starting to learn the 5 aggregates, you don't fully understand them yet. So things that you'll need to look at in terms of applying this precept of living compassionately for the welfare of all living beings is you're going to need to consider, would you participate in the euthanasia of a human or an animal, or termination of a pregnancy, or suicide or assisted suicide, or capital punishment, or war, or any government-sponsored killings, or murder? These are intentional killings, but remember, this precept isn't black and white. Right? It's not saying preserve all life at all costs. It's saying live compassionately for the welfare of all living beings. So I'm just going to take one of these, like termination of a pregnancy, and I'm going to walk you through how an individual might come to different conclusions on this. And it doesn't mean one way is right and one way is wrong. It's just different conclusions based on the variables that are going on at the time. This isn't plug and play where you plug in a precept and then you always do this one particular thing. Now, some people think about termination of a pregnancy as a political issue, and I don't think of it this way. I don't talk about politics. I don't discuss politics. I don't get into politics. But termination of a pregnancy is a medical technology that we have available to us, and it's there for a reason. And to me, this is a human issue. It's not a political issue, because as human beings, this is something that we've invented, that we have. And in some cases, someone might choose to use it. In other cases, somebody might not choose to use it. But whatever is the case, it's that person's decision. It's not my decision to decide what somebody should or shouldn't do. And I'm not here to try to convince somebody of what they should or shouldn't do. If a student came to me and asked me, should I terminate my pregnancy, I wouldn't say yes or no. I would say, well, if you terminate the pregnancy, here's what you'll experience. And if you don't terminate it, here's what you'll experience. And then the decision's up to them. I'm just here to share the natural law of Kamma with them to help them understand it. And then it's up to them to decide what they choose to do. So terminating of a pregnancy for an individual who is maybe carrying a fetus, and we know through medical technology that this woman's life is in danger and this baby is never going to live viably outside the womb, perhaps that person decides to terminate the pregnancy. And that's a wise decision perhaps for that particular person. She's living compassionately for the welfare of all living beings, because in order to have compassion, you need to have compassion for yourself. It starts with yourself. You can't have compassion for others if you don't have compassion for yourself. So whenever you're practicing loving kindness and compassion, it starts with this being who you are now. So this female who has a pregnancy, who this baby is not going to live outside the womb and her life is in danger, if she carried that all the way through, well, she's not living compassionately necessarily for her life, right? So she needs to be able to make the decision that's wise for her, and terminating a pregnancy might be wise. And in this case, she could be living compassionately for the welfare of all living beings. Now, in another case, maybe somebody's using it as birth control, where 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times they're continually getting abortions. Maybe this would be unwise for that person, that they're now terminating the pregnancy and they don't necessarily need to. And now this can impact the woman. She can feel potential guilt or shame. She can experience a shortened lifespan due to the termination of these lives that are happening. So each individual needs to decide for themselves of when it is a wise decision for them and when it's not a wise decision. But these are things that you're going to need to consider and use this precept as a way to reflect. Let me give you some other examples. Say that you have termites that are eating your house, right? And now they're eating your house, and you're going to be out of the house within a couple of years if you allow these termites to continue to eat your house. So what do? Well, you need to live compassionately for the welfare of all living beings. What this precept is designed to do is help you eliminate your anger, your ill will, your hatred towards other beings. All the teachings of the Buddha are helping you to eliminate those pollutions of mind, those 10 fetters. So that's why he's teaching you here to live compassionately for the welfare of all living beings. And he's not saying preserve all life at all costs. He's teaching you to cultivate this loving kindness and compassion in the mind. So if I had termites eating away at our house, which I actually did, that's why I use this example, is I would look online on the internet and see, is there a way to eradicate these termites without killing them? Is it possible? And you research, and this is living compassionately for these living beings, that I'm not interested in just killing them straight out. Let's do some research and see if there's a way to eradicate them from the house where we can have a dwelling that doesn't fall down and the termites can go on their merry way and do something else. But what you might come back with is, no, there's not a way at this point in time to eradicate termites from your home without killing them. And you might need to call an exterminator to come kill them. And that's how you eradicate them from your home. And it's not that you're killing them intentionally and that you're wanting to kill them. The reason why these termites are being killed is because they're causing harm. This is their kamma. They're causing harm, so now harm is coming to them. And this is one of the challenges of living in the animal realm, is an animal doesn't have the consciousness to understand, I can eat these trees in the forest, but I should not eat this wood of this house. This would be an unwise decision to eat the wood of the house. A human being has a consciousness, and we can develop the wisdom to understand, let's harvest these trees in the woods, but I'm not going to harvest this tree that's in somebody's yard because they own that property, and it would be unwise for me to cut down their tree because I'm going to be harming that person. But a termite doesn't have that level of consciousness. And this is one of the challenges in the animal realm and why they can't develop their mind to get to enlightenment. So you're going to come across these various situations at different times, and you're going to need to apply this precept. And where you have challenges, you can reach out to your teacher. I'm here to help you. And remember, as I shared this morning when we were talking about the Eightfold Path, that the natural law of Kamma is a law that's functioning at a much higher level than the human laws. Because now let's take another one. Let's take war or any government-sponsored killing. A government could tell you, hey, we would like you to go to that other country and kill those people. Those people are our enemies. Go kill them. But if you come here on our land and you kill somebody, we're going to prosecute you for murder. But if you go over there and kill those people, we're not going to prosecute you for murder. So this is a human law, right? And that's why it's imperfect, because it's created and administered by humans. But the natural law of Kamma, it's not administered by anybody. It just happens. It's a natural law. So this natural law of Kamma, if you go off and you kill, you're more likely to get injured. You're more likely to get killed yourself. You can get amputations. You can get brain injuries. You can get mental challenges. You can get addicted to substances, and you might commit suicide yourself. This is something that happens oftentimes when soldiers go away to war, that they die very young. And this is their kamma, because you can't hide from your kamma. So even though a government might tell you, this is a human being saying, hey, it's okay if you go over there and kill those people, we're not going to prosecute you for murder. okay, but you're still going to be affected by the results of your decisions. So this is where you need to decide for yourself, would it be wise for you to go off and do this war, right? So looking at the natural law of Kamma, it's a natural law that's functioning at a much higher level than the human laws. Then there's things like a DNR. I don't know if your country has this. This is something students asked me about one time. So that's why I've put it in here, and I put it in the book to help you guys understand it. What a DNR is called a do not resuscitate. This is a legal document that you sign while you're alive that is instructions to your family that if you die for any reason, don't bring you back to life. This is not an intentional killing because you haven't killed anybody. What you're saying is, I'm comfortable with death, that if I die, don't use medical technology to bring me back. I'm completely fine with that. So if you put one of those in place, or if you have one of those in place now, you're still practicing this precept. So I'd like to share that with you in case you have one of those in place or you're considering doing that. Then some other ways to reflect on this and think about this precept is think about defense and protection, right? Like say you're at home sleeping at 2 or 3 a.m., someone breaks into your house. They come in through the window. I guarantee you they're not bringing you chocolate and flowers at 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, right? They're there to do harm, right? My advice to you would be, if you can, just get out of the house. Go somewhere else, call the police, let the police come. They've got the tools, the equipment, the training, let them deal with it. If the person wants to steal something, if they want to break something, so what? It's impermanent anyway. You would like to protect this life and get out. Live compassionately for the welfare of this living being. But you might find yourself backed up against the wall, and this person might have a piece of wood or something like that, right? Well, if you need to protect yourself, if they have a gun, if they have a knife, you're going to need to do that. It's just like the termites. If this person is making decisions to come bring harm, then harm is going to most likely come to them, right? That's what the natural law of Kamma is. And this is why in most situations, if you need to harm this person, then you're not going to be prosecuted for that because this person is broken in. What I would suggest is cause the least amount of harm as possible. If they just have a stick or they just have fists, get a bigger stick, right? If they have a knife, maybe you need to get a knife, or maybe you need to get a gun. And if you end up needing to kill this person, that's their Kamma. You didn't go out intentionally looking to kill somebody. You don't have anger, hatred, and ill will going out actively looking to kill somebody. You're just protecting this being, living compassionately for this being. So this precept is to help you eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will, and all those lesser versions where you're not actively and intentionally killing. So if you walk down the street and there was an ant under your foot and you accidentally killed it because you're just walking down the street on the sidewalk, you're not going to experience unwholesome results because you haven't made any intentional decision to kill that ant. But if you were walking down the street stomping and smashing your feet and trying to intentionally kill beings, there's a certain amount of anger and hatred and ill will there that's making that happen, that's motivating that unskillful conduct. So that's where you can apply a precept like this. And then lastly, I'll talk about this one, and then I'll open up to any questions that you guys have on your life or anything that I'm sharing here. Is you might decide to consider whether or not you'd like to continue to consume animal products, because by consuming animal products, you're being affected by this. If you eat animal flesh, when animals are being killed in order to serve for food, there's certain drugs and hormones and toxins that are in those animals. And when you're eating it, it's affecting the body. You're experiencing more sickness, and there's even mental challenges that happen because of this. Not just farmed animals, because farmed animals have hormones and other toxins that are being injected into them, but also even wild salmon have been taken out of really clean rivers in America, and they tested the flesh and they found cocaine, they found antidepressants, they found other substances like this that were inside the flesh of the animal. So if you're eating the flesh of an animal, it's producing more sickness in the body. Scientists are showing us this, and it's also affecting your mind because you're ingesting that cocaine, you're ingesting that antibiotics, you're ingesting the antidepressants that they found in these fish. So you don't have to convert to a plant-based food supply. That's not what I'm telling you, but I'm just sharing with you. You should consider this because you would like to elongate your life as long as possible. And by moving to a plant-based food supply, this will help you to elongate your life and give you more and more opportunity to get to enlightenment. Whereas if you continue to eat animal flesh, it's affecting the health of your body, but it's also affecting the climate and the environment that we live in as well. So these are all things that you're going to need to consider. And if you do decide to move to a plant-based food supply at any point, I would recommend doing it gradually, because the mind craves permanence, right? That's what we know about the unenlightened mind. It craves permanence. So it's going to hold on to the central desire of eating the meat. And if you try to go cold turkey and switch over to a plant-based food supply, your mind and your body is not going to like that. So if you do it gradually, incrementally, slowly but surely, this will be a more sustainable decision for you, because you're going to need to find new restaurants, new suppliers of food. You're probably going to need to find new recipes if you cook for yourself and things like this. And that needs to happen gradually. The way that I did this is I moved over to eggs and cheese. I got rid of meat pretty quickly, and I ate eggs and cheese for about 6 months. And then I slowly phased that out as well. And it took me time to find new restaurants and new suppliers and places to eat and things like this. And nowadays, there's quite a lot of foods that are plant-based that are very tasty. In the old days, I imagine if people moved to a plant-based food supply, the quality of food wasn't quite there yet. But now, with more and more people moving to plant-based food supplies, you see a lot of really high quality foods in the plant-based arena. So this might be something that you choose to look at some point whenever you're ready. You may or may not do that. When or if you're ever interested in switching over, this is something you can independently verify for yourself by doing research. But also, if you do choose to switch over to a plant-based food supply, you'll see the health of the body improves. You won't find that you have digestion issues. You'll find you have more energy. You'll find that the mind becomes more and more clear. So this is something that you might consider as a way to practice this precept of living compassionately for the welfare of all living beings. And there's more details on this in the book if you decide to read this chapter, which is chapter 7. So do you guys have any questions on this precept? Yes, sir. If you guys could get the microphone. And for those of you guys online, if you guys would like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly.
Just on that last discussion on the consuming animal product, it sounds that you're saying that it's almost got nothing to do with sort of morality or anything. It's just that that the teaching is purporting that a plant-based diet is healthier.
That's what I'm sharing with you, that I noticed that when I moved to a plant-based food supply, I noticed significant improvements to the health of the body with digestion and the health of the mind too. And you'll notice these same things too. And this is the Kamma, that when we make wise decisions, it's going to produce wholesome results. And when we make unwise decisions, it's going to produce unwholesome results. So the precept here is to live compassionately for the welfare of all living beings. So when I looked at this and I thought about practicing it, I noticed that I was eating meat. And I felt like this wasn't living compassionately because I was eating another being. And it's very hard to have compassion for another being while you're eating it. So if you do decide to move over to a plant-based food supply, you're going to notice improvements, and these wholesome results that are coming to you is as a result of making the wise decision to have compassion for other beings. And whether you choose to do that or not, it's up to you. It's your choice. When or if you ever choose to do that, it's your choice. And I'm just sharing with you my experience based on practicing this precept and applying it to a plant-based food supply. One of the things that I looked at when I was researching this is that human beings at one time were plant-based eaters. When we first came into the world, we were plant-based eaters. But I didn't believe the scientists and the researchers that I saw that were sharing this kind of thing, and the anthropologists. I started looking for independent, verifiable proof that we were plant-based eaters, because this is what all the research was showing. And I looked at something simple like our teeth. And I started looking at the teeth, and I noticed, wow, my teeth are very similar to a cow and to a horse that eats plant-based food. And they always have eaten plant-based food. And our teeth are very, very, very similar to them, where a being that eats animal flesh, like a lion or a tiger, they have very sharp teeth because they need to grab, tear, and rip, where what people were sharing is that human beings at one time were all plant-based eaters. And we moved to meat out of necessity because our population became so large that we ran out of plants in the forest. So we started being scavengers, and we started running away lions and tigers, and we took over their hunt. And then that wasn't enough meat for us. So we started to learn how to do organized hunting. And then that wasn't enough meat for us. So we started to do manufactured farming, and that's what we do now. And now what scientists are sharing with us is that manufactured farming is having a huge impact to our environment. This is one of the reasons why our environment is unhealthy. And we can see that this decision of killing animals is causing harm to the environment, and it's causing harm to our body. And if you would like to make a decision to move to plant-based food, you'll see an improvement to your overall health and to the environment as well. But when or if you ever choose to do that, it's your choice. Any other questions here?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Just when it comes to, I'm thinking about milk and eggs. So if you want to refrain from like contributing to killing other living beings, if you have like a chicken from when it was small and you let it run out the length of its life and it just gives you eggs, and there was no cruelty or anything towards that chicken in its life, or like a cow could give you milk, and the cow just lives, eats grass, and dies naturally.
Yeah. What you'll notice is that these substances, the milk and the eggs, they have the same toxins in it that I talk about related to animal flesh, because the animals are drinking the groundwater, and the groundwater is polluted, and or people are putting medicines into the animal. So when you're drinking cow's milk, you're still ingesting those drugs and hormones and toxins and all those kinds of things that are affecting you. And then also as a society, what we're doing is we're keeping these beings trapped, and we're saying, you need to serve us and you need to give us these products that we want in order to survive, where we're the only species on the planet that drinks milk from another being, where we of course drink milk from our own species, but we're the only species that drink milk from another species. So we're keeping this being trapped to serve us. And one of the things that I thought about when I was switching over to a plant-based food supply is I thought about, okay, what if human beings weren't the dominant creature on this earth? Because at one time we weren't the dominant creatures on the earth. Right now we are. But let's just say we weren't, and there was some other being that was more dominant than us, like some giant that was like 50 feet tall, and we were not at the top of the food chain, so to speak, and we weren't this dominant creature. If that creature was keeping us trapped in a cage and we were there to provide it food, how would we feel about that? And I was like, I wouldn't like that if somebody was keeping me trapped in a cage and then I was there to provide them food. And I started thinking, why would I do that to an animal? Because all beings should be treated equally. Oftentimes what we do is, as human beings and as the dominant creature on the planet, we tend to put ourselves up high and we think of animals as lower than us. But the more that you practice these teachings, you'll come to the understanding that all beings should be treated equally, and that if we keep animals trapped in a cage to provide us self-serving needs or anything else that we want through our own selfish desires, that this is harmful to that being, and this is why the harm is coming to us. And it would be much wiser if we become independent of other animals, and that we can eat a plant-based food supply and then we're not killing anything at all. But again, when or if you ever choose to do that, or each individual's decision to do that, it's up to them to decide that. I'm not here to tell you what to do or force you to do anything. I'm just sharing information with you for something for you to consider. But even cheese and eggs and milk and all that stuff, it still has the same drugs and hormones and toxins in it that's affecting your body and affecting your mind. Yes, ma'am.
But like, what about if you live, I don't know, in a big garden with a big house and you have 3 chickens?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
What if you live in the nature and you have the space to have 3 chickens and cows, or and they give you, like, it's not that you want them to do it, but they just do eggs?
For me, I wouldn't rely on an animal to live for any purpose whatsoever, whether it's leather goods or milk or eggs. Right now I'm eating a little bit of eggs because my B12 dropped significantly, because I was donating a lot of blood. Every 3 months I was donating blood, and I wasn't ingesting that much supplements in order to supplement my B12. So for the last month and a half, I'm lifting up my B12. And then at the end of February, I'm going to get rid of eggs again and cheese. But this is something that the body and the mind needs time to gradually move over to a sustainable food supply. And for me, I'm not interested in sustaining my life off of anything that comes from a animal, because I know the harm that it's causing to the animal. I know the harm it's causing to the environment, the harm it's causing to my own body and my own mind. And I would rather get off of all animal byproducts, even leather goods. Like I said, like I don't have any of those kinds of things in my life. So what you choose to do is up to you. But in that situation, I know that if I ingest the eggs, there's a certain amount of toxins and drugs and hormones and things like that that I'm ingesting. But living compassionately for the welfare of all living beings, I understand that this is the first time I've moved over to a plant-based food supply, and I need that B12. And if I don't have that, then I'm not going to be alive to be able to then share teachings to help other people to understand these teachings. So to live compassionately, I need to find that middle way for myself. So when I went about 4 or 5 years without eating any eggs and cheese, and I realized my B12 was low, I decided to bring in some eggs in order to lift up the B12. But it's only a temporary thing, and now I'm going to not donate blood as frequently, and I'm taking more supplements than I used to take before. Before, I wasn't taking a B12 supplement. I was only taking a multivitamin. So this is where you need to find the middle way and kind of like navigate that. And as you see any kind of harm that's happening, there's some unwise decision that you're making. So the unwise decision that I was making is I was giving too much blood and I wasn't taking a B12 supplement. So now I'm correcting that so that I can get back to just completely plants. So I wouldn't do what you're describing, even though it might sound to you at this point like, wow, that could be a way to still eat eggs and drink milk. But I know those chickens and those cows, they would much rather be out in the forest being a chicken and a cow. One of the things that we experience as a result of our decisions to be using animals as products for us to eat is things like COVID. If you look at COVID, this was tracked to potentially a wet market where there was animals being sold for food, and we're inundated with all kinds of viruses and diseases from the animal realm. So even things like HIV and mad cow disease, swine flu, all these different diseases, there's been a litany of them over the years, and COVID was the one that's the most recent that people understand. I think there was over 1 million people that died from COVID, maybe more. I don't know how many worldwide, but this is our karma. This is the results of our decisions because we're relying on animals to provide us these products. Now we're coming in close contact with animals, and now the viruses are making their way into the human world. Whereas if we just let animals be animals off in the forest, we wouldn't experience any of these things. So even in a situation where you have a chicken and a cow that's just roaming about and just giving you their eggs freely, there's still this contact with the animals, and now you can experience the transference of viruses from the animal realm into the human realm, and now it affects you in this life. And that's what is our unwholesome kamma from making the choice to interact with animals so closely. So for me, I wouldn't do that, but whether you do it or not, that's your choices, your decisions. Any other questions on this one? Yes, ma'am.
I have one.
Mm-hmm.
So in a case that there is some, the person feel that there is some attempt of harming, not always necessarily the wisest thing is to be passive, but sometimes is to maybe throw this energy back to who's coming with this harming energy, this harming attitude. I don't know how I would put, but it's basically not necessarily always will be wiser to just be passive if you feel something is coming to harm you. So sometimes it can be wiser for you to project this harming in order to also, your welfare in the case. I don't know if
I'm not clear on your question. If you could say your question.
Yeah, so sometimes maybe it's wiser to not be passive, but instead be harming to some other person if you feel like something is coming to harm you.
So you're talking about the defense and protection, right? Yeah. So like that example that I gave, whereas if you're in your home and you're sleeping and somebody breaks into your home, they're there to do harm to you, right? And that's why I say the best thing to do in that situation is to get out if you can. That would be the wisest thing in my opinion. But there's going to be a situation where potentially someone can't get out. And what I'm sharing with you is that in that situation, if you need to cause harm, then that's what you need to do in order to live compassionately for this living being that you are now. But I would encourage you to do the least amount of harm as possible, just enough to stop them from doing harm to you or your family that's there. Because the reason why I'm teaching you guys in this way is that I can't know all the variables that you're going to face in any given situation. It's impossible for me to do that. And it's impossible for you to know all the variables at this point in time. So that's why the Buddha is teaching you those Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path that we talked about this morning, where you're training your mind to be calm so that then you can access your wisdom. When you have calmness and composure in your mind, you can have mindfulness or awareness of mind. Then you can have concentration, and then you can access your wisdom and make wise decisions. Whereas if you allow your mind to be shaken up and uncalm, you're not going to have mindfulness or awareness of mind. You're not going to have concentration. You're not going to be able to access your wisdom. So in a situation where someone's breaking into your home, the first thing you should do is remain calm. Right? Because that's going to allow you to have mindfulness, concentration, and access your wisdom. And now you walk through, what are your options here? Okay, I can lock my door. I can put a chair behind the door. I can try to climb out the window. But let me look outside the window first. Is there any other people out there? Maybe there's a gang that's come to your house, right? It'd be unwise to jump out the window. That's where each situation is going to be unique. And by you keeping your mind calm and understanding this type of precept where you'd like to live compassionately for the welfare of all living beings, you'll come to the wisest decision in that situation. And I'm just giving you a couple of scenarios to think through so that you can think through this and reflect on this and decide what's best for you in that particular situation that you're confronted with. And each individual situation is going to be unique. So you're going to need to have the calmness and composure to be able to decide what's wise in each situation. Yep, you're welcome. Would you mind turning off that mic? I think it's crackling a little bit. Some of them don't quite pick up as well. And I was told that the police station being so close that they're on the same frequency as us. So it creates this static. We had the sound people in here this weekend, and they were making a lot of tweaks to our mics. And they were saying that there's a lot of frequency here in our tempo. It's off? Okay, good. Good. Thank you. Any other questions here or any other questions that you guys might have online? Any other questions here? Let's see. Okay, we don't have any online either. Okay, so let's go to the next one, which is the second precept. Remember, these are the words of the Buddha. You're learning, you're investigating, you're examining, then you're going to reflect, and then you're going to practice. That's where you see the real results, right? If there's anything in your life where you're experiencing unwholesome results, there's an unwise decision somewhere, and you got to uncover it so that you can get wisdom and then prove that situation. So where I experienced a B12 deficiency, that's where I was like, hold on, there's some unwise decisions that I'm making here. What do I need to improve? So that's when I started looking at what am I doing that contributed to this B12 deficiency, right? So here you would like to learn. So the learning part is here. Let's read this. Abandoning the taking of what is not given, living purely, accepting what is given, awaiting what is given without stealing. Okay, so this is the learning, right? So here I'm now going to apply this to these particular situations. Of course, what the Buddha is teaching you is do not steal, right? It would be very unwise to steal because you're causing harm to somebody else. If I stole somebody's car, they can't go to work. They can't take their children to school. They can't go to the grocery store and get food. I've harmed this person. I can't cause them discontentedness, but you can cause other people harm. And in this situation where I've harmed somebody, I've injured them, now they're going to potentially be interested in injuring me, right? I could get beat up. I could get murdered. I could go to jail. People could steal things from me. These are all results of my decisions to steal. It sounds like we have a mic on somewhere. If you guys could check your mics that you guys have with you. Yep. Okay. So this is a precept that's teaching you not to steal because you're disinterested in causing harm to others. Then the next one here is assuming something can be taken or used. It would be unwise to assume that something can be taken or used. The example that I shared, I think at another point during our retreat, is that if you're a student and you're handing in a paper to your professor, and the professor is out of the room and there's a stapler on their desk, and you just walked in and assumed you could use the stapler and you stapled the paper. If the professor walks in and they saw you there and they're attached to their stapler, it could be like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you using my stapler? That's my stapler. What are you doing? Because they're attached to their stapler, right? Maybe they're not practicing generosity, right? And now they're angry and they're frustrated and they're not practicing these teachings necessarily. So now they're going to attribute their anger, their painful feelings to you. They're going to think that you're causing their frustration and their anger. And now you probably get a bad grade on your paper, potentially, right? Or you might even fail the class. So if you assume things can be used and you don't ask for permission, this can put you in a situation where you're compromised. But remember, this isn't black and white. It's not plug and play. What if you're walking down the street and somebody had an accident with a lawn tool when they were cutting their grass or they were cutting bushes, and they have a cut and they're bleeding profusely, and then their neighbor has a fabric on their lawn and you could put a tourniquet on their arm and save their life? Maybe you take that thing without asking, right? And maybe you talk with the neighbor later and say, hey, I'm so sorry. I used your fabric. I tried to save that person's life and I put a tourniquet on their arm. So this isn't black and white where it's always do it this way and never do it this way, right? It's not black and white. So you're going to need to look at this and figure out. The first precept is showing you to live compassionately for the welfare of all living beings. This one is sharing with you not to steal, but you need to be looking and contrasting what it is that you're experiencing in each situation and decide what would be wise in each situation, right? And now this one here where the Buddha says accepting what is given. What he's talking about here is that when you're living in a society of people, there's going to be people who practice generosity with you. And the more that you learn about generosity, you're going to learn that it helps with craving, desire, attachment, the cause of discontentedness. And by people practicing generosity, this is helping them to enhance their mind. So if people are practicing generosity with you, what the Buddha teaches is to accept what is given, right? To accept something, because that's helping them to enhance their mind. And if you shut down their generosity and you're like, no, grandma, I don't want that sweater. Don't give me that sweater. I don't want that. You're shutting down grandma's opportunity to practice generosity and now enhance her mind and practice the elimination of craving, desire, attachment. So what the Buddha teaches you is to accept what is given. So if grandma gives you this sweater and you know you're never going to wear this sweater ever, the Buddha is teaching you to accept it, right? But then what you do is you practice generosity. You give it to somebody else. And it might go through 3, 4, 5, 10 different hands. Eventually, somebody's going to get that sweater and they're going to say, this is the most beautiful sweater I've ever seen. I'm going to wear it every single day. Thank you so much, right? And there's been these 10 people that practice generosity along the way. Now, if grandma gets angry that you gave away her sweater, that's because she wasn't practicing pure generosity. She had a certain expectation. She had a craving. She wanted you to wear her sweater. And now, because of her craving, she's going to experience the unwholesome result of frustration or agitation or annoyance. But you didn't cause that. She caused that herself. But remember, it's not black and white. If somebody offered you cocaine or crystal methamphetamine, are you going to accept what is given? No. Right? You've got to compare and contrast this based on wise decision making. So this isn't black and white. So when people teach these as black and white, you need to be able to understand the words of the Buddha. This is very helpful to be able to see the words of the Buddha because they're very illuminating. They help you to understand fully how to practice something like this. It's not black and white. There's this large gray area that you need to navigate. So moving to a higher consciousness, which is what enlightenment is moving to this higher consciousness. It means you think through the decisions that you're making. It means that you take in the variables, you take in the situation that's going on, you take your time, and you think through what would be a wise decision. Whereas if you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, you're going to be trying to rush and make really fast decisions because you're trying to hurry up and get to those pleasant feelings. But if you can throttle that back and restrain the mind, You can take your time and make a wise decision that's going to be wise for you. You don't need to hurry up and make a decision. You can take your time so that you can navigate this gray area more wisely. And where you need help, you reach out to your teacher and will help you. And then more and more, it becomes very clear to you what would be the wise decision. This next one here, awaiting what is given. That's what the Buddha is sharing with you. What he's essentially sharing with you is don't put your expectations on people and expecting them to give you something. Say you lived with a partner, you live with a roommate, and they're going on a business trip, and you're like, oh, that place has really great get me this and get me this and get me this and get me that. Well, now your friend or your partner goes on this business trip, and now they're burdened with all these expectations from you about what you want. And now they're feverishly trying to find all these things, and they're getting frustrated because they can't find the things that you want. And now when they come back, they don't have everything that you want and that you expect. And now you get frustrated because they didn't bring you what you wanted, right? So the Buddha is teaching you to await what is given. Don't have an expectation that somebody will give you something. This is the reason why when you go to Buddhist temples, you don't see people passing around a plate and asking for donations. It's up to each individual. We don't have an expectation that somebody will practice generosity with us. We're just here sharing the teachings to help you. And if somebody would like to practice generosity, they practice generosity. But if not, then that's fine too. We're still here to share the teachings with you. So we await what is given in all parts of our life, in your personal life, in your professional life. The Buddha is teaching you not to have an expectation that somebody will give you something. And this is a wise way to practice, because then you won't experience frustration and agitation and anger when somebody doesn't give you something that you wanted. Okay, so this is the second precept. Any questions on this one? Not seeing any questions anywhere. So let's go to the third precept. This one oftentimes is translated as no sexual misconduct. Well, that's very general, very broad, and very subjective, right? So the Buddha here is going to give you details about what sexual misconduct is. So I'm going to read it to you, and then we'll apply it to the various situations. So what he's saying here is abandoning unchastity, abandoning sexual relations with women, men who are protected by their mother, father, mother and father, brother, sister, or relatives, who are protected by teachings, who have a husband, wife, or partner, whose violation entails a penalty, or even with one who has been garlanded by a man, woman, or partner as a sign of engagement. So what he's talking about here is harmful sexual conduct. So I'm going to walk you through this. He's talking about not having sex with minors. That's where he's talking about sexual relations with men or women who are protected by their mother, father, brother, sister, or relatives. The reason why is because a child is growing and they're developing. Having sexual contact is very impactful. And if you had sex with someone who is 8 years old or 12 years old, it's impacting that child's ability to learn and grow in the household. And now you're causing harm to that household. In most places in the world, it's also illegal to have sex with minors, but not everywhere. There's some places in the world where it's legal to have sex with an 8-year-old child. So here, the natural law of Kamma is helping you to see that that's unwise. Because if you look at the places where it's actually legal to have sex with a minor, you can see their society is really struggling. Economically, they're really impacted. And in terms of the wisdom that they have in that particular area of the world, it's lacking. And they're really struggling with food and water and basic necessities that they need to sustain their life in those particular regions of the world. So here, this is going to be impactful to a society. If the children are having sex this early, they're not learning and growing, and then there aren't adults in society that are making wise decisions that can now develop the society in a beneficial way for all people. So it would be unwise for you to have sex with someone who's living at home with their parents. Here, sex without consent, where the Buddha is saying whose violation entails a penalty, that's what that is. That's like rape, having sex against somebody's will. And if you're doing that, it's causing harm to that person, and now the harm is going to come back to you. So it would be wise to have sex with someone who's giving you consent to do that. And then where the Buddha is saying abandoning unchastity, this is about having sex with multiple partners. What chastity would be is having sex with nobody. If you guys know about what a chastity belt is, in medieval times, they had these metal belts that fathers would put on their daughters, and they would have a lock and key, and it would be like this metal underwear essentially, and nobody could have sex with her unless the father opened up these metal underwear. So that would be chastity, right? So what the Buddha is saying is abandon unchastity, meaning like going out and having sex with lots of people. So you can see if you've ever done that or other people have ever done that around you, there's the potential for sexually transmitted diseases. This is our kamma. This is the results of our unwise decisions. By going out and having sex with lots of people, you can potentially get a sexually transmitted disease. And some of those are fatal. And that's the unwholesome kamma from the unwise decision. You can also experience difficulties in your relationships. If you're having sex with multiple people, then people can start being attached to each other. They can be fighting, they can be arguing, they can be injuring people. You can get murdered in these situations where people are tugging and pulling at you. Oftentimes there's lying involved in having sex with multiple people because you need to lie to one person to be able to get away to go have sex with this other person. These are all difficulties and challenges that you'll experience as a result of this. So that's why he's teaching to abandon unchastity. But sometimes you might be in a culture like Thailand where you meet a partner and then it's kind of part of the culture to have that partner come live with you in your parents' home. And in this situation, a parent has accepted this relationship. And here where the Buddha is saying abandon sexual relations with someone who's protected by their mother and father, this isn't that type of thing. So like here in Thailand, oftentimes when you're 20, 25, 30, you're still living at home. And then when you meet a partner, you develop that relationship, you talk to your parents, you say, hey, we're going to get married. Would it be okay if we live together in your house? And then when we save enough money, we're going to go get our own house. And your parents say, yes, you're welcome to do that, right? And now in that situation, if you're choosing to have sex at home, that's completely normal, right? The parents have accepted it. You're not causing harm to anybody because this person is of age and your parents have accepted this relationship. Sex with someone who has previously decided to remain celibate. This is where the Buddha is saying, who are protected by teachings. If you decide that you're going to move all the way to the fourth stage of enlightenment as an arahant, you're going to need to eliminate sexual contact at some point. This may not be the time that you're choosing to do that, particularly if you're younger. You may not be interested in eliminating sexual contact right now. But there's some people who have chosen to eliminate sexual contact. You can actually get to the second stage of enlightenment and still be maintaining a sexual relationship. And in the second stage of enlightenment, your life will be very, very peaceful. You'll still be experiencing discontentedness occasionally, but you'll still be able to maintain a sexual relationship in that second stage of enlightenment. You can actually do all the other work on the path to enlightenment and still be maintaining a sexual relationship, and your life will be quite peaceful and quite joyful. But there's going to be occasions where you get sex and you'll feel great and you'll feel wonderful, but then there's going to be times where you can't get it and you're going to be agitated and annoyed. So around sex, you're going to have discontentedness still. You're not going to be able to have that permanent, peaceful, calm, serene, content mind with joy because there's still a desire there. There's still a longing and yearning for sexual contact. So if you decide to learn these teachings, practice them, develop, get all the way to the second stage of enlightenment, you might hang out there for a period of time, maybe 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, who knows how long. But at some point, you're going to get to an age where you've been there, you've done that enough times, and you're going to be like, you know what, our relationship is much deeper than sex, and both of you guys are going to be ready to let it go at some point. But that may not be right now, and it may not even be later. Oftentimes, we might think we're going to be on our deathbed still having sex because it's that enjoyable, right, for some of us. But I guarantee you that there's not many people in their deathbed still having sex. You're going to let go of sexual contact at some point. It's only a matter of time, that it's impermanent. So if you decide at some point that you are going to let go of sex, what the Buddha is saying is if you chose to have sex with someone who's done that, who's chosen to let go of sex, that you would be causing harm to that person. And the reason why is because that person's making an effort to get to enlightenment, and somebody getting to enlightenment is the very best thing for that person. And it's really wonderful for all the people around them too, because now somebody getting to enlightenment, they would have the wisdom of how to do that. And then they could share the teachings with others to be able to also get to enlightenment. Here in Thailand, they make it easy for you to know about this because ordained practitioners aren't having sex. That's one of the reasons why they're wearing robes and they're shaving their hair, so that people know, like, okay, they're not having sex anymore. So if you're interested in having sex, have sex with someone who's not ordained. Also, people who wear white tend to have given up sex as well. I didn't wear white because I chose to give up sex. That's not why I wear white. I have chosen to give up sex, and my wife and I no longer have sex. We sleep in separate rooms, and our relationship's wonderful. It's better than it ever was, even when we were having sex. But people who wear white tend to be practicing where they're celibate. So if you see somebody wearing white, or you see somebody wearing an orange robe like a monk, these are individuals who've chosen not to have sex. And what the Buddha is saying is it would be unwise for you to try to lure that person away from their celibacy and their choice to no longer have sex. So one of the ways to extinguish a craving is to fulfill it. So if you're still young and you still are interested in having sex, go have sex. Do whatever you would like to do. That's your choice, your decision. And that's one of the ways to extinguish a craving for sex, is just go ahead and have a lot of sex. If you've ever done that a lot in a one particular day or one particular week, you eventually get to the point where you're like, gosh, I don't know if I can do this again. This is a lot of work. You know, taking all these showers and doing all these things. Yeah, it's a lot of work, right? You get to the point where you're like, all right, I don't need to do that for a while, right? So if you do a lot of sex and you have a lot of sex, you'll eventually get to the point where, yeah, you've done that, been there, done that. Maybe you're 40 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old, 70, 80, who knows? But this is one of the things that if you ultimately would like to get to enlightenment, where your mind's permanently peaceful and joyful, by getting rid of sex, that's one of the things that will help you do that. Because otherwise, there's going to be some agitation in the mind when you can't get sex. But when or if you ever choose to do that, it's your choice, right? You can do all the other work on the path to enlightenment and still be having a sexual relationship. And then at some point, you can decide to let that go if you like. It's up to you. And what the Buddha is teaching you here is to not lure somebody away from their vow of celibacy if they're choosing to be celibate. This next one here is sex with people who are already committed in other relationships. That's where the Buddha is saying up here, who have a husband, wife, or partner, and then even one who's garlanded with a sign of engagement. So if you have sex with someone who has a partner, you can get injured, you can get murdered, you can have all kinds of difficulties. You can lose your reputation in your community if you're having sex outside of your relationship, or you're luring somebody away from an existing relationship. You can have all kinds of difficulties physically and then with your reputation. People have been murdered over these kinds of things. It's very unwise. And then you can also get sexually transmitted diseases too. So that's the unwholesome Kamma of the unwise decision. So those two there are the same. Sex outside of any relationship you are committed to. And then the one on the bottom is talking about sex with people who are human trafficked. If you are going into that environment where someone's being human trafficked, they're being forced to have sex potentially, and there's money exchange typically. And in this situation, yes, you can get sexually transmitted diseases. You can also get beat up. You can also get murdered. You can get robbed in these situations. You can also get arrested in some of these situations. So these are the unwholesome results of the unwise decision. And then there's some other things here too to consider. Is a paid sexual service environment, the same things can happen. You can get injured, you can get beat up, you can get murdered, you can get robbed, you can get sexually transmitted diseases in these situations. It's unwise to go in that direction. It's better to just find a partner that you're loyal and loving and committed to, and then have sex in that environment. Notice that the Buddha doesn't have same-gender partners in here. Right? The Buddha was aware of same-gender partners during his lifetime because it was going on during his lifetime too. The reason why he doesn't have same-gender partners in here is because there's no harm. If there's two loyal, loving, consenting adults choosing to have sex, that's their choice. They're not causing harm to anybody. So if it's a male and a female choosing to have sex, they're not causing harm to anyone. They're a loyal, loving, consenting couple. And if it's two males or if it's two females, the same exact thing. They're not causing harm to anyone. The Buddha talks about it in his teachings, where he talks about men who don't identify with masculine qualities and women who don't identify with feminine qualities, but he doesn't teach anything about it because there's nothing to teach. He was just making an observation and helping his students understand that you're going to encounter this. So same-gender relationships, if you're someone who prefers same-gender relationships, or you have people around you that prefer that, They're not doing anything wrong. It's completely normal. And if you understand the universal truth of impermanence, you understand that it's not possible for every man to be interested in having sex with a woman or every woman to be interested in having sex with a man. There's going to be some people who don't prefer that. If everybody preferred to have sex with the opposite gender, that would be permanence. And this universal truth of impermanence wouldn't be true. But we know the universal truth of impermanence is true. And this is why we see some people who are interested in having sex with someone of the same gender. It's completely normal. It's been going on ever since from the beginning of time. It's not something new. This individual isn't mentally ill. They haven't harmed anybody. But the challenge is that in society, there's other people who have a craving, a longing, a yearning. They want every male to have sex with a female, and they want every female to have sex with a male. And when that craving doesn't get fulfilled, the anger arises, like we were talking about last night. And where's all this coming from? The ignorance, the unknowing of true reality. They don't understand the natural laws of existence. So the Buddha is explaining to you the natural laws of existence, and it explains to you people who prefer same-gender relationships. It's completely normal based on everything that we know about the natural laws. And the same thing is true for transgender individuals. This is completely normal too, if you understand the natural laws of existence, that you can have a body that is of one gender, and you can have a mind that is of a completely different gender. If you understand the universal truth of impermanence, it's not possible for every mind that ends up in a body to identify as the same gender. If that was true, then there would be no such thing as the universal truth of impermanence. But we all understand that as part of the beginning teaching of the Buddha, there's this universal truth of impermanence that we all study and we understand and we can verify that is the truth. So some people are going to have male sexual organs and their mind is going to identify as male. Some people are going to have male sexual organs and their mind identifies as a female, and then vice versa with the female gender as well. And this is completely normal because it's explained through the natural laws of existence of the universal truth of impermanence. We can also understand it through the cycle of rebirth, because if we understand that we've all been different genders in the past and we've had many different births in the past, then even though somebody is a male gender now, has a body that is male gender, that doesn't mean that their mind is identifying as a male or as a female. They could have been previously female, and now that mind coming into this body, even though the body has male sexual organs, the mind can identify as a female, and then vice versa. They could have female sexual organs and the mind can identify as a male. So if you're a transgender individual or you know people who are, completely normal. They're not mentally ill. They haven't done anything wrong. It completely is understandable through the natural laws of existence. But remember, there's that craving out there where there are other people that are going to crave for everyone to be a certain way. And when they don't get their craving fulfilled, their anger is going to arise, and then they're going to have hate towards this group of people. And this is all coming from the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. But the more that you understand true reality, you can understand all these things. It just makes sense. And then something like masturbation. This is something that people often ask me about. With masturbation, it's not something that is always going to be beneficial, and it's not something that's always going to be harmful. It's all about how you're choosing to use it. The first thing to reflect on is, who is being harmed when you're masturbating? Is there another being that you're harming? The answer is no, because there's another being involved. It's just you, right? So then you would like to look at, well, how are you using the masturbation? If you have learned these teachings and maybe you have 5 boyfriends, 5 girlfriends, maybe 10 different boyfriends or girlfriends at this point in time, and then you learn these teachings and you're like, wow, I should only have one. It's really unwise for me to have so many boyfriends and girlfriends. Well, if you have a really high sexual craving and now you're coming down to just one partner, you might use some masturbation to help you alleviate the sexual craving in order to get down to one partner. This is helping you to eliminate sensual desire in the mind, and this is really beneficial for you. You're making a wise decision, moving from 10 boyfriends or girlfriends down to 1, and then this masturbation is there to help you eliminate some of your sexual craving as you're moving to just one partner. Or say that somebody was interested in going out and raping an individual and having sex without consent, and now they decide to use some masturbation instead. This can be used in a really wise way. But on the flip side of this, an individual could be masturbating so much that it's actually causing their sensual desire to arise. If they're masturbating 10, 15, 20 times a day, this could actually be harmful to them, the person who's doing it, because their sensual desire is arising. So what you like to look at with masturbation is, are you decreasing your sensual desire, or are you increasing your sensual desire? If you're decreasing your sensual desire, this can actually be really beneficial in certain situations. Because the way that a craving works is, when you're having a craving and you're trying to get rid of it, oftentimes that craving starts to arise more and more and more, and it kind of puts pressure on the mind, and sometimes you need to alleviate it. It's kind of like a dam. If you had a dam where there was water and they closed the dam, the water can build up and build up and build up and build up and put pressure on the dam, and it's going to destroy the dam. And you know what they do in order to protect the dam is they open it and they let some water out, and now the pressure of the water drops, and then they close the dam again. Right? This is the way to alleviate pressure from a dam, so you can protect the dam and it doesn't break this infrastructure that costs typically millions and millions of dollars to build. So whenever the water builds up and there's a lot of pressure on the dam, they open it up and relieve the pressure. So the same thing might need to happen in your situation as you're eliminating some of these cravings, particularly sex. You might notice that you go a particular long period without sex, maybe 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. You feel the pressure build up, and you might need to use some masturbation in order to alleviate that pressure. And then, okay, now if you went 3 months without sex, maybe now you can go 4, 5, or 6 months without it. And then you feel the pressure building up. Maybe you need to use some masturbation to drop that pressure down. It's like opening up the dam. And now maybe after the 6 months, now maybe you can go 9 months or 12 months. And this is how you can use masturbation in a helpful way. So sometimes people teach that masturbation is immoral, you've done something wrong, you're a horrible person. This isn't actually true. It's all about how you choose to use it. Are you decreasing your sensual desire, or are you increasing it? So you might need to look at something like that as you're moving about the world and addressing this kind of thing. Sex with animals can't give us consent to have sex with them. And I imagine if somebody did this, they would probably get injured. There may be some diseases or illnesses that come along with this. This is a black and white one, right? That animals can't give us consent. So it would be unwise to have sex with animals. Pornography. In a situation where someone's looking to pornography, typically they're looking for intimacy. They're interested in having a relationship, but maybe they're not able to, so they go towards pornography. And this can be kind of like indulging in a fantasy world. And when you go into pornography, your mind gets kind of trapped into this addiction sometimes. And then it's very hard to come out of that. And then even when you do come out of that, even when you start having sex with individuals rather than viewing pornography, oftentimes the experiences don't feel as fulfilling any longer, because your mind has been in this fantasy world with the pornography for a period of time. And when you're coming out of that addiction, it can actually be challenging for you to now have an intimate relationship with an actual partner. So if you're interested in having sex, I would encourage you to go towards a partner. Find a loyal, loving, consenting relationship, because by going towards pornography, it's going to take you into this fantasy world that is going to be challenging for you to come out of. And you're potentially supporting an environment where people are working and having unchastity and maybe even being forced to do this type of work. So if you go in the direction of a partner where you can have intimate relationships, you can have close contact, this would be ideal for you rather than going towards pornography. And if you're currently watching pornography, that might be something that you need to let go of over time and gradually move away from it. And you'll notice that your mind will be more clear and more focused and more concentrated as a result of getting rid of that particular craving. So any questions on this one here? Number 3, often translated as no sexual misconduct, but you can see there's a much more to understand and learn and investigate and apply here than just something very general and broad like that. No questions? Sometimes this one draws a lot of questions. No questions. Okay. All right. So move to the next one. This one's really straightforward. Number 4, abandoning false speech, refraining from false speech, a true speaker, one to be relied on, trustworthy, dependable, not a deceiver of the world. The Buddha is teaching here to not have false speech, to not lie. right? If you've done a lot of lying, which we all did as children, you know that it causes problems. It causes unwholesome results. People can't trust us. We're not dependable. It affects us in our personal life and it affects us in our professional life. That if you do lying, people are going to discover those lies. And now you're going to lose out on personal relationships and you're going to lose out on professional opportunities. So by being a true speaker, you're one to be relied on. You're dependable. People are going to see you as trustworthy. And now your personal and professional relationships can really grow and really blossom. So that's the core of what the Buddha is teaching here in this particular precept, helping you to preserve your ability to be trustworthy in a community. There's this other teaching that I've included here to help you see how closely the Buddha practiced this precept. This is a teaching where he's teaching his son. A lot of times people think that he left his family and he never came back, but he actually did. After 6 years, he comes back, and his son and his wife and his mother, his stepmother, ordain with him, and other people from the royal family do as well. So here he's teaching his son. He's talking to his son and he's telling him that he doesn't even tell a lie as a joke. Right? That when the Buddha tells a joke, he doesn't even lie. If you can imagine this really wise individual who's helping people to get to enlightenment, if he was in class speaking all this truth about the natural laws of existence, but on the side he was telling lies in his jokes, people wouldn't trust him, right? Because he's telling lies on the side. So even when a Buddha tells a joke, they're going to tell the truth. Right? You might not associate a Buddha with telling jokes because oftentimes we see pictures of him in meditation and looking very solemn and all these kinds of things. But a Buddha tells jokes. They have a personality, right? They have character, right? They're not going to be sitting around being solemn all the time. They're someone that you can relate to, somebody that you can talk to. So if a Buddha sat around being solemn all the time and he was all uptight, the way that a lot of times these pictures make him look, you probably wouldn't be interested in learning from that person. But if someone has a personality, if they're joking, they're having fun, a Buddha is going to joke and have fun. I guarantee you the Buddha urinated and defecated. I guarantee you that he farted. I guarantee you that he picked his nose, right? These are all things that we do as human beings. What's better way to get boogers out of your nose than to pick your nose, right? So there's no other way that they've invented yet to be able to get those things out of there. Now, maybe you use a Kleenex, right? But that's one of the best ways to get them out, right? So a Buddha is going to do things like that. They're going to tell jokes. So don't feel like you have to walk around on eggshells when you're learning to be enlightened. Being enlightened is to have fun, right? You're going to have fun. You're going to have joy. You're going to have great experiences. You're going to be laughing and joking. But what the Buddha is teaching, what he did is he never told a lie, even as a joke, once he got to enlightenment, right? So if you're going to joke, it's wise to joke with truthful jokes. Oftentimes when people joke, they diminish people or they degrade people. This is very unwise to belittle people, even as a joke. It takes a lot more skill and a lot more wisdom to tell a joke that is the truth because it has to be thought out. You really have to think it out. And it takes a lot more skill to tell a joke where you're not belittling people and you're not degrading people. But you'll notice that when you do this, people are going to feel more comfortable to be around you because you're not causing harm to other people. When you stop causing harm to others, you're going to notice more and more people are willing to be around you because you're not causing harm through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And having other people around you can be really joyful. It can be really wonderful because if it's your personal life or your professional life, you can go out into the world and spend time with people. You're going to need other people to be successful. You can't just stay in a cave for the rest of your life and live a wonderful life. That's not going to produce enlightenment. If somebody went off into a cave and spent all these years there and came out, they're not enlightened yet. When we talk about the Buddha going into the forest for 6 years, he wasn't isolated for 6 years. He didn't go into a cave and then come out and then he was enlightened. He still needed to practice right speech and right action. So he came in contact with people through those 6 years because he needed to get food. They were giving him food and clothing and all these other things that he needed. So he was coming in contact with people during those 6 years. You wouldn't be able to go live in a cave for 10 years and then come out and be enlightened because maybe you're peaceful in that cave by yourself. But then when you come out and you start interacting with people, can you maintain your peacefulness? That's going to be determining whether or not you're actually enlightened or not. So you might be peaceful in a cave for 10 years, but as soon as you hear the first baby cry, or as soon as you hear something else that you don't like, if your mind's discontent, you're not enlightened yet. So a Buddha tells jokes, a Buddha farts, a Buddha does these other things, right? So here you can see this teaching where when he tells jokes, he doesn't even lie during telling a joke. And if you're trying to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state, if you were telling lies to different people, your mind would be obsessively trying to figure out, what did I tell this person? What did I tell that person? What did I tell this person? You're going to have to keep all those lies straight. You're not going to be able to get to a peaceful and joyful mind if your mind is obsessively trying to figure out what you told one person versus another. So if you just speak the truth, this is going to produce the most benefits for you, where you can just be calm and confident about what it is that you're saying. Okay, any questions on this one? No? Okay. I'm not seeing any questions online either. All right. So now we'll go to the last one, which is refraining from strong drink and sloth-producing drugs, substances that cause heedlessness, the basis for heedlessness. So the first thing you might ask yourself is, what is heedlessness, right? If you're investigating and examining the teachings of the Buddha, you're not interested in assuming anything related to vocabulary or the words that are being used. Remember, there's 2,500 years of history here where these teachings were spoken by a man 2,500 years ago in a particular language. They were documented after his death, and then they've been through many iterations of copying. They didn't have photocopy machines. They didn't have hard drives over the years. So they were painstakingly writing them from one person to the next to the next. So you're not interested in believing any of the teachings, but you're trying to penetrate them to be able to understand them and gain wisdom. So the first thing I did when I saw this teaching is I tried to understand, what does this word heedlessness mean? So I looked it up in the dictionary, and here's what it came back with. That heedlessness is careless, thoughtless, inattentive, uncalm, unaware, and unmindful. Because you need to produce mindfulness in your mind in order to get to enlightenment. You need to be aware of your mind. And by having awareness of mind, you can then purify the mind. You wouldn't be able to eliminate your unwholesome qualities and cultivate the wholesome qualities without having mindfulness or awareness of mind. So if you're introducing a substance into the body that is producing unmindfulness, you're walking in the exact opposite direction of enlightenment. And if your mind is heedless, you're more likely to kill, steal, have sexual misconduct, and lie. If you go to a prison or you go to jail and you talk to people who are locked up, they might be there for murder. They might be there for robbing a bank. They might be there for any number of things. But if you really talk to them and ask them, why are they in jail and why are they in prison? They'll say because of substances. Because they'll say, I would have never murdered that person if I wasn't high on that substance. I would have never robbed that bank if I didn't have an addiction and I needed that money. About 80% of the people that are in prison, they'll tell you that it's from substances that cause heedlessness, even though their charge might be murder or robbery or something like this. So these substances that cause heedlessness, they're going to put you in a condition where you have difficulties making wise decisions. And in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to be making lots and lots and lots of wise decisions. So here we can look at these different substances and we can compare and contrast and reflect on this, because it's not black and white. If we look at something like marijuana, we know that marijuana provides medical benefits. There's undoubtedly unrefutable evidence that there's children that have seizures 20 times a day. They give them a little bit of CBD oil on the tongue. They don't have another seizure for 6 months. This plant has medical properties, we know for sure. But this plant can also be used for heedlessness. It just depends what your intentions are and how you're using it, whether or not it's going to cause harm. So usually if you're looking for medical properties of this plant, you're looking for a high CBD content and a low THC content. Whereas if you're also looking for medical purposes, you're probably looking at an edible, or you're looking for an oil, because this is a good way to ingest it, that it doesn't cause harm to the physical body. But if you're looking for a high, you're probably going to be looking for a high THC and a low CBD. And you might be smoking it, and now it's causing harm to the lungs. So this is something you're going to need to look at. Sometimes people are using this plant for heedlessness. So I would encourage you to not use it for heedlessness. Some people use this plant for things like stress or anxiety. But this isn't going to solve your stress or anxiety, because what's causing stress and anxiety is craving, desire, attachment. The craving, desire, attachments in the mind is what's producing that. And you're going to need to train the mind to eliminate the cravings, desires, attachments. When you smoke marijuana, you might feel pretty chilled for a while, but it's only temporary because it's based on a condition. The condition is the marijuana. You would like to get to the permanent peacefulness, the permanent joy. So you're not going to be able to get to permanent peacefulness and permanent joy if you're using marijuana to reduce your stress and your anxiety, because you're only going to notice the reduction of stress and anxiety when you're high on the substance. And then when that substance gone, then your stress and anxiety comes right back. So if you're looking to get rid of stress and anxiety, you would like to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. So this is something to look at. And then there's cigarettes. We know that this doesn't provide any medical benefits at all. And more people are figuring that out. When we were smoking as human beings, it caused damage to our lungs. This is the unwholesome results of our unwise decisions if we smoke cigarettes. So there's no medical purpose there. Prescription medicines, these of course provide really good benefit to help us elongate our life, but there's some prescription medicines that can be addictive. So when you're getting prescriptions from your doctors, it's wise to research them and see if they're addictive. And then if they are, you might consult with your doctor and ask them if there's an alternative medicine, because sometimes doctors prescribe things that are addictive and there's an alternative that you could use instead. In some cases, there isn't an alternative, and you might need to just know that it's addictive and try to get off of it as soon as possible so that you don't get addicted to it, because some prescription medicines can be addictive. So you're going to need to look out for that. There's no purpose to have caffeine, but oftentimes people use caffeine. This is a drug. This is a stimulant. This may be something that you're ingesting now. And if that's where you're at in your practice, then that's where you're at. But what you're going to notice is the more you train your mind, the more mindfulness, the more pure your mind becomes, the caffeine is going to affect you more and more. You're going to notice that it takes you into an excited state. You might notice that you speak rapidly. You might notice that you have dry mouth. And when you start eliminating caffeine from your intake, you're going to go through withdrawals. You're going to notice headaches. That's the withdrawal symptoms. Just like someone who's on heroin or some other illicit substance, they're going to go through withdrawal. This is how you can see that caffeine is indeed a stimulant and a drug and a substance. It's a legal one, but it's one that a lot of times people turn to. Well, by the time you get to enlightenment, you're going to have natural energy. You're going to be able to sustain your energy throughout your day. You'll get sleepy where you need to sleep, but you won't get tired. You won't get exhausted. Enlightened beings don't get tired. They don't get exhausted. They get sleepy. They need to get some sleep. They need to get some rest, but you won't feel this drain on your energy that you do in the unenlightened state. When you have pollution in your mind, you'll feel this drain on your energy, and you might try to turn to something like caffeine to lift you up. But then you're going to drop back off from that. And as long as you're doing that, you're not allowing the mind to produce the natural energy. So if you decrease and ultimately eliminate your caffeine, it'll give the mind the ability to build its natural energy, and then you can sustain your energy throughout your day. Whereas if you turn to caffeine, you're going to keep experiencing the up and the down, the up and the down. And what you would like to get to is sustained energy throughout your day where you're never tired. So this would be the reason to eliminate caffeine from your intake. And when or if you ever choose to do that is your choice. If you do it, I suggest to do it slowly and gradually. This will have the best results for you. You'll even need to look at things like sugar. If you take sugar in excess, it can produce a high. We probably all experienced that when we were kids, right? And then we dropped off from that. So you might need to look at your sugar intake and see if you're taking sugar in excess. Or if you have children, you might need to help them to not take sugar in excess. And then this last one here is psychedelic substances. Some people will share with you that psychedelic substances are helping you to get to enlightenment. There's things like ayahuasca or LSD or things like this. This isn't actually true. It's not helping you to get to enlightenment. What these substances do is they do produce kind of the ability to have introspection, but it's being produced by a substance, and you can only experience that introspection when you're on the substance. What you would like to do is cultivate that naturally, because in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to be introspective at many different times during your life. And if you can only be introspective when you have a substance, you haven't been able to cultivate that naturally, so that when you're driving in a car, when you're walking on a hike or something like this, you can be introspective about what's going on. You're going to need to look at your own thoughts at many different times during your day, in your week, in your month. And if you can only be introspective based on a substance, then you're not able to cultivate that reflective mind, that inward looking mind, to look at your own mind. So some people will tell you that this is going to help you get to enlightenment. But the way that I think about psychedelic substances is it's kind of like walking down the sidewalk and you're doing window shopping. And you're looking through the window and you can see this beautiful product inside the store, and you really would like to get that beautiful product, but you're chained down to the sidewalk outside. You can't actually go into the store and get that beautiful product. Maybe it's a pair of shoes or a purse or something like that. You're just looking in the window and you can see what enlightenment may kind of appear like, but you can't actually touch it. You can't hold it. You can't acquire it as long as you're taking psychedelic substances. So this is what I have to share with you here. This isn't an exhaustive list. Notice that the Buddha teaches in a timeless way, because he could have never imagined that we would have created things like PCP or LSD or any of these things. So he's not giving you a list of all the substances. He's teaching in a way that's timeless, that if you understand the core of this teaching, it's to ensure that you're not taking substances that produce this unmindfulness or unalertness or unawareness, because you're trying to walk in the opposite direction of that. You're trying to get to awareness of mind. You're trying to get to attentiveness of mind. You're trying to get to mindfulness. So if you're introducing substances that are producing heedlessness, you're walking in the opposite direction of that. So any questions on this one or any of the others that we've been talking about? For those of you guys online, you can put it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like. You have a question? Sure.
In Brazil, I think the use of ayahuasca is very common, like especially when there's this ritualistic religion thing. So it's something that is allowed. And I know that for some people, the use of ayahuasca is like a way of doing some detoxing from especially people that use some like chemical drugs or things like this. So the ayahuasca sometimes in these situations helps people to pass through some from something that is more chemical to something that's more because it's a plant mixture. So in this case, when people are trying to get out from these things, would be like okay, because I see that it's like a transition kind of process, but I from what I see, from what I experience, from what I shared with other people, like sometimes it maybe can be something that helps to I don't know, in the process for people. In this case, like would be wise this use of this substance, even though the idea is to reach this and not take this substance as like shortcuts.
Yeah, there's no shortcut to enlightenment, and I would share that it's unwise to use psychedelic substances because there's all kinds of harms that can happen there. What a psychedelic substance is doing is it's producing a conditioned experience, that you're now having this experience based on some condition. The condition is the substance is going into the body, and now it's producing this conditioned experience. What you're trying to get to is unconditioned mental qualities of peace, calm, serenity, contentedness with joy. A conditioned experience of taking a psychedelic substance isn't going to be able to help you to produce an unconditioned mind. So you'll see a lot of things happening in the world that many people are doing. Like all these things that I just talked about, there's lots of people out in the world that are doing these things. Killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and taking substances that cause heedlessness. What you're doing on the path to enlightenment, if you choose to continue to progress forward, is you're looking to rise above all of that. We use a lotus flower to describe this. If you ever look at the way a lotus flower grows, its roots are deep down into the earth and holding on to the earth. And then there's this strong stalk that needs to grow through this murky water. And then it rises up over the murky water and it blooms as a lotus flower. This is an analogy for what you need to do as a human being in order to get to enlightenment, that your mind is holding on to the earth and holding on to the world really tightly. And you need to grow this strong practice, this strong stalk. That's your life practice. And you need to rise above the murkiness of the world, because the world is the murky water. And then you rise above above that and you bloom as a lotus flower. This is what the mind is doing, is it's blooming into the enlightened mental state to experience the brightness and the radiance and the joy. So while you'll see lots of people doing all these things that I'm talking about here, you're going to need to have the determination, the dedication, and the diligence to see what's wise and what's unwise. And oftentimes when I'm presenting things like this, a student doesn't see it right off the bat. Because as I shared at the very beginning of the retreat, there's things that I'm going to share in this retreat that are completely opposite of what you're thinking right now. And that's a really good thing, because if you're ever learning with a teacher that everything they teach you is what you already know, you're in the wrong place. That teacher isn't benefiting you. You're not learning because everything that the teacher is sharing is exactly what you already know. But there are situations like this where you'll learn things that are opposite of what you currently understand. And you're going to need to spend time thinking about it and contemplating and reflecting on it, of what would be wise and unwise. And you can look into the world and see situations where taking substances like psychedelic substances produces these unwholesome results. And I wouldn't advise people to take psychedelic substances, because any type of ailment that I know about, it can be healed in ways that don't produce those situations. Because what the psychedelic substance is doing is it's causing the mind and inhibiting the mind, creating this hindrance and this obstacle to being able to produce that inward looking eye, that introspection. So whether you or people around you choose to use these substances, that's your choice. I would advise you not to, but what you choose to do is up to you. And I would be here to teach people no matter what people do. Even if you went out and murdered somebody and you called me on the phone and said, "Hey, David, I'm in jail. I really need your help. Can you come share the teachings of the Buddha with me?" I'd come see you, right? So my interest to help somebody isn't contingent on you practicing these teachings in the same way as me. But this is how I practice the teachings, and this is what has led to the condition of mind that I experience, and that's what I share with you. So the psychedelic substances aren't going to be needed for a person to get to enlightenment, and it just is like a hindrance and an obstacle. But what you choose to do is up to you. Okay, we have a question coming in here online from Mayu Lee. She says, what if you take supplements that help calm the nervous system, like melatonin or GABA, magnesium? Is that considered heedlessness? So I would need more information about what you mean about the nervous system. If this is anxiety or stress that you're talking about, the way to solve that is through eliminating craving, desire, attachment. If you're introducing a substance to eliminate stress and anxiety, you're only going to feel the reduction of that when the substance is on board. And when the substance is gone, you're going to still have the stress and anxiety because you haven't eliminated the actual source of the stress and anxiety. I think that's what you're talking about here, but I'm not sure. Maybe we can talk about that privately, Mayuli. You can reach out to me through private message and we can talk about this in more detail so that I understand more about what you're facing or what you're considering in terms of this decision that you're looking to make. Any other questions that you guys have? No? Okay. So what I'll do then is just thank you guys for coming to learn, and then let me share with you guys what we're going to be learning tomorrow. I'm going to start off with loving kindness meditation, teaching you guys about this and all the different aspects of loving kindness meditation. Then we're going to do loving kindness meditation together. And then in the morning, we're going to be learning what is Kamma and how does it affect me. Then I'm going to be teaching you what is merit. These are two interlinking teachings that you're going to need in order to make your way to enlightenment. Even though everything we've been teaching has been related to the natural law of Kamma in one way or another, we're going to actually go in and talk about this natural law itself in detail. And then we're going to be talking about what is Kamma and what is merit. And then in the evening, after we come back from the orphanage, we're going to go visit the children at the orphanage to be able to practice some of the teachings that I share with you guys, like generosity and loving kindness and compassion. We're going to go visit them and take them some food and different things that we decide to bring them. Then when we come back in the evening, we're going to do loving kindness meditation again. And then I'm going to share with you guys the first part of really getting into understanding the first stage of enlightenment. We're going to talk about the jhanas, helping you understand what the jhanas are and what you're going to be experiencing as you're experiencing these jhanas, so that you can learn these and then you can have indications of what you're going to be experiencing when you start experiencing these jhanas by putting together the Eightfold Path. This is the light bulb flickering and showing you that the qualities of mind are improving. And at the time when you get to the jhanas, you're going to need to just kind of pivot your practice practice, because you've already put together the Eightfold Path to a certain degree. Now you're going to need to pivot and start focusing more closely on the 10 fetters. But we'll talk about this in more detail tomorrow. So from that point, tomorrow evening on, you're going to see all these new teachings that you may not have learned with me before, like the 5 aggregates, the 6 sense bases, dependent origination. We're going to spend time talking about the fetter or personal existence view, doubt, wrong behavior, and observances. We're going to go through a lot of teachings that are really going to help you get to this first stage of enlightenment. But all these foundational teachings that I've been sharing with you so far, and then I'll share with you up until tomorrow, those are all needed. You're going to need to get those underway before you can start practicing the other teachings that you're going to need to get to the first stage of enlightenment. So by learning these teachings as a foundational core teachings of the Buddha, that's going to then help you to be able to bring on these teachings that I'm going to share with you over Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday that are going to help you get to this first stage of enlightenment. So enjoy your evening, and perhaps I will see you guys tomorrow morning or tomorrow evening. Have a really lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Sawadee kap, sawadee kap, sawadee kap.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.